welcome to Labour Lent. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week's edition of the program, we'll be focusing on how Nigerian workers are responding to the unification of the Naira. We also have news stories for you. We will be right back. The Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC) has said building the capacity of workers through training will boost the nation's development. President of NLC Joe Ajero spoke in Ado-Ekiti, Ekiti State at the 31st Annual Industrial Relations Seminar of the Chemical, Footwear, Rubber, Leather and Non-Metallic Products Employees (NOCFAMPE).
Together we stand as champions of progress, architects of change, the guardians of industrial harmony. Let this seminar be a beacon of inspiration, a testimony to our unwavering dedication to create a world where every worker rights are respected, where every voice is heard, and where every step taken is a stride towards a bigger future.
Speaking on the theme of discourse, social dialogue as a vehicle for promoting decent work and industrial harmony, organizers of the event and facilitators encourage stakeholders to promote decent work for nation building.
The challenges stated above are having negative effect on industrial relations as the involving skilling practice constitute huge threat for peaceful coexistence between the employers and employees. One of these effects is job losses arising from redundancy exercise and factory closures. Another effect is that of slash in salary and other welfare packages of workers.
The four pillars of decent work include promoting jobs and enterprise, guaranteeing rights at work, extending social protection, and promoting social dialogue are the four pillars of the annual decent work agenda, with gender as a cross-cutting theme. Industrial harmony talks about the fact with friendly and a cooperative agreement on working relationships between employers and employees for their mutual benefit. We all have to work together for the mutual benefit of our organizations. We must not allow the ship to sink.
The Nigerian labour market has experienced challenges such as industrial actions, rising unemployment rates and reduction in productivity in recent years. During the last administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, there were agitations of various workers' unions which centered mainly on failure of governments to honor collective bargaining agreements.
For us here to start believing that the new sheriff will do something new, let's go back to what is being owned to ASU. ASU went on strike, but our strike was not illegal. We want our salary that has been withheld since then. We want that salary paid. If that two things can be done immediately, just as we remove the oil subsidy, you can bet me the kind of hope that we return to the university system.
For employers of labor under the umbrella of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association (NECA), the Director General Ale Oyerinde stressed the need to finalize review of labor laws, reform industrial relations system, deepen social dialogue, strengthen institutions of labor administration, and focus on job creation.
The issue concerning the labor law, the social partners, NECA, NLC, TUC, the ministry itself, with support of ILO, we've done a significant work on the Nigerian labor law, and the last administration, I think the document was actually approved by FEC, and most likely the Ministry of Justice will have to do its bid, then send the bill to the National Assembly as an executive bill.
That the reviewed labor law is already being attended to for legal drafting, by the Attorney General of the Federation, Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. So it is almost of the Minister of Labor to facilitate it so that it can move to the National Assembly for the needfuls to be done.
Upon assumption of office, the new Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Lalong, promised to address agitation for new national minimum wage and other palliatives arising from the removal of fuel subsidy.
And leverage on technology, skill acquisition, entrepreneurship, agriculture, among others, to open up more employment opportunities for all Nigerians.
With the rising rate of inflation and unemployment in the country, Nigerians want the federal government to ensure that there are friendly economic policies to foster national development.
This is due to the malaise in the economy, monetary economy, micro and macro policies that we put in place that made the companies not to be able to stand and survive all the inconsistent and constantly changing policies. I am not a supporter of the present government, but I must give it to them that what they have done is they decided to bite the bullet almost immediately without waiting for some time. And in biting the bullet, yes, some people will feel the pains, some people will feel the pain, and some would work from the game. But I know that if we allow some of these policies to work very well, if they're able to stabilize the naira to the dollar at a certain rate, and that would help. Help with planning and also allow a new set of investors to come in. What we had before was some favored ones getting at the official rate, while every other person runs to the streets to get dollar. You see they were subsidizing travel for those who could afford expensive travel. They were subsidizing education for those who could send their children abroad. They were subsidizing health for those who could afford to go to health. I think. The new policy is bringing everybody to ground zero. So we are now fighting for the common interest of the nation to have a very strong naira and also save ourselves from the consistent subsidy we've been paying over the years, which has made the country to be very, very broke.
Let's know the strengths, or when I mean strengths, in terms of what they are what they are producing, the kind of companies that are leaving, because at the end of the day, you don't want sensitive and sensitive companies to leave, because if such companies leave, it means you are going to suffer. So the government would want to ensure. That's why there are interventions, and these are the time for interventions. There are some sensitive aspects of the economy that should be considered, that should get these interventions, because at the end of the day, like I said, some services are just too essential for you to ignore. But other than that, if the services are not that essential, everybody, it's free. It's a free world. Companies can decide to leave, why companies can decide to come. But for the fact that it's because as we see, there are a lot of the population side of this country is large, is quite a number. Excuse me. So there are a lot of companies springing up every day. So by the end of the day, like I said, let's ensure that interventions are made available for the sensitive and essential companies.
On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the national president of ASBIFI. He brings us up to speed on several challenges workers in the financial sector are faced with, while highlighting the issue of brain drain, which the country is faced with at the moment. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Sharon.
My first time having a sit down with you after your election as the president of ASBIFI.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so on the program, you're saying congratulations officially.
Thank you very much.
Even though it's long overdue.
Thank you very much, and it's good to have you here too.
What is happening in the world of work? Well, in Nigeria generally, we are faced with this issue of inflation, and it seems not to be stopping. Week by week, it keeps changing. As the president of workers in the financial sector, what would you say has been your observation, especially regarding the floating of the naira? What's your reaction towards that?
Well, as we all know, and I've said in different places, the floating of the naira was long overdue. And whether we want to accept it or not, it had already occurred. It's just that it wasn't made official. The reason being that a lot of people who needed the foreign exchange, even though they had applied through their banks, still had to go and source the funds themselves because of the time it took for them to get access to the funds that they had applied for at that point in time. So in reality, a lot of businesses were actually buying at rates higher than what the government had to offer. Otherwise, they would have had to wait and it would have affected their own businesses. And you will also recall, if we look at the aviation industry, for example, a lot of airlines complained that their funds were trapped because they couldn't repatriate. A particular airline actually had to leave Nigeria and stop providing services for that same reason. So it's something that was long overdue and eventually caught up with us.
But Nigerians are actually feeling the impact of this policy because we also know that there's this increase in fuel pump price that seems not to be changing, it's not steady. And if you ask them, they'll tell you, oh, the marketers will say it's because of the forex. Since this is affecting us as Nigerians, what will be your feedback? Are there any positives to this newly introduced policy?
Well, the positives would have been what was announced, the savings. If we look at the fuel thing, for example, the savings from what they were spending on subsidy, we find out that the demand for petrol dropped, which meant that what was being imported reduced drastically. However, when you look at the impact on people, especially for something that caught them unawares, we can't say that it's been very positive at this point in time. And I believe that everybody, irrespective of your status in society, has felt the pinch of what is happening. And it continues to change every day. I mean, the rate of the dollar continues to change. Just a few days ago, all marketers were talking about increasing the pump price because of the continued devaluation of the naira against the dollar.
So moving forward, what will be the recommendation that workers will be giving from the formal sector and be representing workers? What has been the feedback from your members, and are there any recommendations that you will give going forward?
Oh, yes. Would have expected that the government would have put adequate plans in place because at times like this, it's not just about increase in salary or giving people money that will solve the problem. Because when you increase salaries, when you give people money, you are simply stimulating inflation the more because the market will react to it. However, based on the reasons being given for the unification of the exchange rates and the deregulation of the petroleum sector, would have expected that the government would have provided palliatives, and the palliatives will be in the areas of transportation, in the area of health, in the area of education, in the areas of agriculture, as an example, because those are the areas, if you look around the world, that is where the government is usually coming to reduce the pressure that people are going through. I'll take transportation as an example. In a country like this, it would have been good for government to increase their participation in the provision of transport services by rail, by road, and all the rest of it, and then subsidize those things. I remember that I had discussion with the general manager of a transport company in one of the states in Nigeria. And he told me, he said, they were not running the business as a profit. They were running it as a service to the indigents of the state. So they were paying very minimal value, very minimal fares to move around. Government provided the cost of maintaining. So what they were getting from transport fares was basically for the day-to-day running, to fuel, to pay salaries and all the rest. The maintenance, yes. And then over a period of time, those buses are turned over and those people are able to move around.
Apart from timelines, what more should Nigerians be expecting from labor leaders in terms of ensuring that the inflation is being maybe regulated, or maybe they'll be able to contribute their own quota to alleviate the suffering of the Nigerian people?
Well, for us, is also to bring up ideas, because it's not just about demanding for money or demanding for solutions. We should be able to profile solutions as well to the government, because, I mean, we're all working together, we're all in this together, and we must be able to come up with the ideas. At least when these ideas come out and the suggestions come and they are feasible, one will expect a responsible government to take it on and be able to apply those things as well for the benefit of of workers themselves. And then on our own side too, we must also ensure that we do not take undue advantage of ourselves, because sometimes that is what usually happens. And a simple example, on the 29th of May, when the president made that pronouncement that subsidy is gone, within minutes, all fuel stations shut down. Fuel stations that sold fuel in the morning suddenly shut down. And within hours, the price of petroleum had gone up without even without the announcement of any regulated price from the government or from the NNPC. So those are the things that we need to guard against, be able to be mindful that whatever we are facing, other people are facing as well. And we shouldn't bring that same kind of hardship upon ourselves.
Very good point there. We shouldn't take advantage, because from my observation, we know that it's actually bad out there, but many people are taking advantage. Moving forward, there are some companies that have already actually signified interest to actually leave the country. And this means it's going to add to the existing problem of unemployment, which Nigerian youths are actually burdened with. What more do you think needs to be done to reduce this to the barest minimum?
Well, we have found ourselves at a time when we need to encourage self-sufficiency within the business environment in Nigeria. We have a lot of intelligent youth who can actually stand on their own. But the question is if the environment itself is conducive for them. There's usually this measurement about great place to work, ease of doing business and all those things. I don't think we have that kind of ease right now. We have found ourselves in situations where you are faced with multiple regulators, real and unreal, coming at you from various places, from the federal level to the state to the local government level, and then you are dealing with probably associations or residents associations and all those things coming after you, trying to milk everything that they can get out of you. So that way it discourages people from doing all those things. Now, when we look at the businesses that are leaving Nigeria, businesses will come and go. And people will take over those businesses. It's not the first time it has happened. I was explaining the most recent one that happened, and I was telling somebody the history of that company, where it started from. Now, the primary business that started still exists in their home country, but disappeared in Nigeria, merged, was taken over, is leaving. I don't think they are leaving completely. What we're probably going to find out eventually is that you're going to find an existing local organization within that business sector itself taking over that business. Now, well, unfortunately, jobs will be affected. We cannot deny that part of it. And that's where the issue of being able to be self-sufficient in running one's own business or one's own activity comes in.
Since the possibility of mass job loss is almost inevitable, what will be your message to employers of labor? And what will be your message also to government to probably cushion the effects of this looming issue that the country is about to face?
Well, today, job losses, like we said, it's inevitable, but I don't think it should be to the extent that we are beginning to envisage. A lot of organizations really have to look inwards before they start making such decisions. Unfortunately, what we found is that once the business environment is not so conducive, the first point of call is to look at the personnel. But hardly do organizations look at the cost of even running the business itself. Just like we talk about the cost of governance too, we also look at the cost of running businesses in terms of emoluments, in terms of, I mean, there are things that could be cut down on that could save those jobs. If we could survive COVID, there's no reason why we cannot survive this and bring job losses to the barest minimum that we have now. Because there are people who are skilled. And if we're not careful, what will simply happen is that we're going to have an increase in the brain drain that we're already complaining about right now. Because what people will find is that they will feel insecure. So people who are not even affected will not wait to be affected, but will rather go elsewhere. And in doing that, it means that we're losing the kind of skills and professionalism that we will require to stimulate the economy and make the country bounce back. And other countries will be benefiting from what we should have been benefiting from.
So looking at the fact that brain drain is a big issue, what will be your message to the government and maybe relevant stakeholders to ensure that the best brains are not taken out of the system, but however, they are actually absorbed into the system?
Well, they need to provide all that is required to make them stay. Again, it's not just about salaries. It's about having the kind of infrastructure, the kind of tools that they require to be able to operate effectively. I'll use the medical sector as an example. These people are living in droves elsewhere, and then we'll go after them to go and seek the same kind of medical help where they've gone to. What stops us from making this place a hub within, even if it's just within the West African region, not even the entire Africa, just the West African region, being able to provide that service. Now we can imagine what we will make from medical tourism, to look at what it is that is actually attracting them, taking them out of the country to those places. Obviously, they're getting the best education that we can provide here. Otherwise, they will not be employing them where they are. There are some places where if you come with the same kind of degree, you have to go through some level of additional training or additional education to be able to practice in those places. But we have our professionals who are leaving the shores of Nigeria and getting jobs even before they leave Nigeria. So it means that all that is missing is the environment for them to be able to operate and be able to put to good use the skills that they have learned.
You're from the financial sector. So far, what has been the feedback? We know that AI has come to stay. We know that the internet has come to stay. What has been the feedback? Are your jobs being taken over by the internet already? Or by machines and codes?
Well, AI is coming in. I can't say that AI has come in fully, but eventually, I mean, when we see what is going on, just even testing it creates some kind of fear in everybody. And eventually, all those things will come into place. And that's why we always encourage our members to upskill themselves in those areas. Now, AI is taking the job of the people with the same technical skills, because just by typing a few words, you are getting what 10 people will do. But the environment is wide enough. There's still a lot of things. It's not everything that AI will be able to do, because remember that you're also going to deal with humans who are not technically savvy. You're going to have people who will still prefer to see you real time. Yes, I used to laugh about this some years ago, that my late father would leave his house and go to the banking hall and write his check and collect his cash. He never had a card. He never had internet banking. Whereas my mother was very, very excited about all those things. So you are going to find them, and it's not just in Nigeria, it's all over the world that you will find things like that. So we'll continue to improve ourselves and ensure that we have the kind of skills that will be required wherever we find ourselves, so that we won't just be caught unawares.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.